The late afternoon sun lit up the quiet suburban cul-de-sac where I lived. The air was crisp, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional snort from my two horses, grazing peacefully in the fenced backyard. My property wasn't a ranch, but it was just big enough for my animals to stretch their legs. They were my pride. Thunder, a tall bay gelding, and Misty, a calm, dapple-gray mare. Both well-trained, both gentle, but apparently not everyone saw them that way. Across the street, Karen, the self-appointed watchdog of the Homeowners Association, had been glaring since the moment I brought the horses home. She never said anything directly, but I often caught her muttering to neighbors, waving her hands dramatically, as if my horses were dangerous monsters. That day, as I refilled their water trough, I heard a sharp voice cut across the air. "Excuse me, those beasts don't belong here." Karen stormed toward the fence, her arms crossed tightly. "This is a residential neighborhood, not some barnyard." I calmly wiped my hands on my jeans. "They're registered therapy animals. I have the permits. HOA rules don't ban them." Karen's face twisted. "That's what you say. But I'm not about to let this street turn into a circus. Those horses are a health hazard, and I will not tolerate the smell, the noise, or the danger." Before I could respond, she whipped out her phone, stabbing at the screen. "Animal control will take care of this." I sighed, shaking my head. Thunder snorted as if he could sense the tension, but Misty just kept nibbling grass. I had nothing to hide. Both horses were in pristine condition, stalls spotless, vet records up to date. Still, the idea of an officer showing up, because of Karen's drama, filled me with frustration. An hour later, the white animal control truck rolled up, its logo reflecting in the sunlight. Karen marched out of her driveway triumphantly, hands on her hips, like a queen about to witness justice. "This way, officer," she shouted before he'd even stepped out of the vehicle. "You need to see these creatures for yourself." The officer, a tall man with a calm expression, approached the fence. Karen trailed behind him like a shadow, already preparing her speech. I stood ready, documents in hand. "Evening, officer. I'm the owner." He glanced at the horses, then back at me. A slow smile spread across his face as he said words that made Karen freeze mid-rant. "Good, the trainer's here." Karen blinked at the officer, completely thrown off. "Trainer? What trainer?" "I called you because these animals are illegal." The officer didn't even acknowledge her outburst. Instead, he leaned casually against the fence, studying Thunder and Misty with an appreciative eye. These two look well cared for. Good muscle tone, shiny coats. Not what I usually see when I get a call about neglected animals. I nodded, a little relieved by his reaction. "They're my therapy partners. I've got their papers here. Vaccinations, HOA permits, the city's clearance for keeping them on residential land." I handed him the folder I'd prepared, knowing Karen wouldn't stop until every box was checked. Karen stomped her foot like a child denied candy. "No, that can't be right. Horses don't belong here. They poop, they smell, they attract flies." The officer finally turned to her, his tone calm but firm. "Ma'am, horses aren't illegal here. Not when everything's up to code. And from what I can already see, these animals are in top condition." I couldn't resist a small smile. But before I could speak, the officer added something that made Karen's jaw drop. "In fact, I've been a certified equine trainer for over 10 years. The department sometimes calls me in when cases involve horses. So, technically," he gestured toward Thunder, who perked up at the sound of his voice. "Scene. I'm here as both officer and trainer." Karen's face turned red. Well then, you should know better. They're dangerous. Look at their size. One kick and someone's dead." The officer chuckled, shaking his head. "Ma'am, these two are calmer than most house dogs I see. Watch this." He stepped closer, extending his hand slowly. Thunder lowered his head, letting the officer rub his muzzle. Misty moved closer too, nudging him gently as if demanding equal attention. "They're social, trained, and safe," he explained. "I can tell instantly when an animal's mistreated. These two? They're practically therapy grade." I couldn't resist adding, "Actually, That's exactly what they are. I work with veterans and kids with special needs. These horses change lives. Karen sputtered, searching for an argument. That doesn't matter. The HOA rules, the officer cut in, don't prohibit therapy animals. And they certainly don't prohibit horses if the city has granted a permit. Which, he waved my paperwork, this owner has. The silence that followed was golden. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she snapped, "We'll see about this. I'll call the HOA board myself." "Don't think this is over?" The officer smiled again, unbothered. "You can call whoever you like, ma'am. But from where I stand, these animals are not only allowed here, they're an asset." I couldn't help the grin spreading across my face. For the first time since Karen had started her crusade, the tables were turning. Karen wasn't the type to back down gracefully. The moment the officer's words hit the air, she whipped out her phone like it was a weapon. "I'm calling the HOA president," she snapped. "We'll see if he agrees with you." The officer raised an eyebrow but didn't stop her. He calmly patted Thunder's neck while Karen stomped a few feet away, muttering into the phone. I could hear every word, her exaggerated complaints about giant beasts destroying property values and health hazards infesting the street. I leaned toward the officer. "Sorry you had to deal with this. She's been at it for weeks." He smirked. "Trust me, I've dealt with worse. Some people think a barking chihuahua is grounds for a SWAT call." We both chuckled quietly as Karen paced, clearly not getting the response she wanted. Finally, she hung up with a loud, and marched back. "The president says he'll be here in 10 minutes, she declared, her chin high like she'd just summoned the cavalry. "Perfect," I said, my voice calm. "More people who can actually hear the facts." Karen didn't like that answer. She crossed her arms, glaring at the horses. Thunder swished his tail, and Misty stomped a hoof, unimpressed by her theatrics. The officer leaned casually against the fence. "Since we've got time, why don't you show me their routine? Feeding, cleaning, exercise. That way, when the HOA president arrives, I can vouch firsthand." Karen gasped. "What? That's ridiculous," but I grinned. "Gladly." I led the officer around to the small barn where I kept hay, grain, and supplies. Everything was neatly organized. Feed bins sealed, tack hung in order, stalls clean with fresh bedding. He nodded approvingly at every detail. "You run a tight ship," he said. "Cleaner than most stables I inspect." We walked back to the paddock, where I showed him how I handled the horses. With just a whistle, Thunder walked right up to me. Misty followed, calm and steady. I clipped their leads and guided them through a short routine, walking in circles, stopping on command, even backing up gently when asked. The officer's smile grew wider. They're not just trained. They're disciplined. I'd trust them around kids any day. Karen couldn't take it anymore. "Oh, please. Tricks don't mean they're safe. The board will shut this down." As if on cue, a sleek black SUV pulled into the cul-de-sac. Out stepped the HOA president, Mr. Lawrence, a tall man in a crisp suit, who looked more ready for a boardroom than a backyard standoff. Karen rushed toward him like she'd found her savior. "Finally! You have to make them leave. This whole neighborhood is at risk." But Mr. Lawrence didn't look at her. His eyes went straight to the officer, and then to the horses. "Interesting," he murmured. "I didn't expect to see these here." Karen clung to Mr. Lawrence's arm like she'd dragged him into battle. "You see them, don't you? Huge, filthy, dangerous creatures ruining our neighborhood. You've got to enforce the rules." Mr. Lawrence calmly adjusted his tie, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to me. "Are these the horses you filed a permit for a few months back?" I nodded, holding up the folder the officer had already reviewed. "Yes, sir. Thunder and Misty. Fully cleared by the city. Therapy certified and within all HOA guidelines." The officer added, "I've inspected them personally. They're not only healthy and well-kept, but trained to a level most horse owners dream of. Honestly, they're the kind of animals that add value to a community." Karen's mouth fell open. "Value? Value? They smell. They're giant piles of manure on 4 legs." Thunder chose that exact moment to let out a deep, rumbling nicker that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Even Mr. Lawrence cracked a smile. "Karen," he said finally, his tone polite but firm, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but the board approved this property for therapy animals, and considering the owner has met every requirement, there's no violation here." Karen sputtered like a firework about to explode. But, what about the children? The noise? The resale value of my home." Mr. Lawrence raised a hand. "The only noise I hear is you. As for the horses, they're cleaner and quieter than most pets in this neighborhood. And resale value? Frankly, having certified therapy horses nearby could be seen as a positive for families who need those services," the officer added with a grin. "Besides, I'll be recommending them for community outreach. Kids in neighborhoods like this rarely get to interact with horses. It could be a great program." That sealed it. Karen's face went crimson, her lips trembling as she searched for a comeback. But for once, she had none. She turned on her heel, muttering, "This isn't over," before storming back to her house and slamming the door so hard her wind chimes fell off the hook. The cul-de-sac went quiet. Thunder flicked an ear. Misty went back to grazing like nothing had happened. Mr. Lawrence gave me a respectful nod. "Keep up the good work. Not every homeowner brings something this unique to our community. You've set a fine example." The officer patted Thunder's neck one last time. "You're doing more good here than Karen realizes. If she calls again, don't worry. I'll make sure the file is crystal clear." Relief washed over me. My horses weren't just safe. They were officially recognized as an asset, not a burden. As the officer and president left, I looked at Thunder and Misty, my heart swelling with pride. Karen had tried to use the rules against me. Instead, those same rules had turned against her. And for once, the HOA drama ended with me smiling. Enjoying this wild HOA drama? Hit that subscribe button for more unbelievable neighborhood showdowns. If this story made you laugh, smash that like and tell me in the comments. What would you do if Karen called? Animal control on your pets?